Mark has been with us maybe probably now a half a dozen times. He has the record for the most appearances on projections. He never fails to inspire all of us, and it's always thrilling to have Mark. And I do want to thank Photo Shelter and Epson and Pro Photo Daily and American Photography for being with us. With that, Mark Edward Harris, it's all yours, Mark. Again, thank you so much for doing this.
No, thank you, Frank, and thank you, Jay, for always taking care of the all the practical stuff that goes into this for the projections, and also to the sponsors and everybody. So I'll jump in. I'm going to go fairly quickly. It's been a long day, and you guys have seen a lot of my stuff before. I wanted to start sort of with my beginning journey, just to recap. The first time I went in 2022, I went out to and it's very strange in a way because I went out in part because I had just done a book on orangutans, which seems like a strange connection between the two. This is the book, which I don't know. I don't know if I ever did a presentation about
No, you didn't.
that series. But since I already broke the record, we don't need to do one on that as well.
Uh,
But I heard this bizarre story about all these animals were being evacuated out of Ukraine, including there was one guy uh, who had a couple of orangutans, and I thought, wow, what an amazing story. And the Russians had actually on their way to Kharkiv. I'm going. Sorry, I always apologize in Japanese. On the way to Kiev, uh, had actually gone through this zoo, and they left the animals alone. And so I went. I got on a plane and I went over, and I found out also in Kharkiv. There was also some orangutans with an amazing backstory. So that really was my focus. And then I expanded it about animal rescue. And so that, but of course, when you're somewhere, you're not just so myopic that you're just shooting exactly what you went in to do. I also went up to Irpin, and so the photo on the left is Kharkiv, which was the zoo, which where I was photographing some of the animals, and then on the right side is Kiev, and there's something symbolic there because the father, I gather, gave this plastic gun to the kid when he's crying on top of a blown up, Russian, piece of armory, and that's there's a symbolism there. But we'll go on. But this is now once again in Kharkiv, where this is an unexploded ordnance. In front of the same building where Manu shot out of that building, and there's some amazing video, closed circuit video. If you guys ever look up Kharkiv, at the moment that this building is destroyed, and it's horrible. I mean, just daily life. People are driving. Of course, there's a war, 30 kilometers away, but totally unexpected. And that's what I tend to focus on is just daily life. And even for those who know what I did, through my 10 trips in North Korea or two trips in Iran, I'm really interested in daily life, not just what we see of North Korea of people marching around, but really how are people living there? But what happened is when I got to Kharkiv, I found out about this Feldman Ecological Park, which was directly in the path of the Russian invasion when they were heading toward Kharkiv. And they were brutal. I mean, they shot up this enclosure of these animals. I mean, what did the animals have to do with anything, right? And it was brutal. And then there was a fantastic documentary, which I didn't see till afterwards, but Carol Guzzi is actually in it, who's been a guest on with you, Frank.
yes.
Um, and if you can see that documentary, it's about the zoo and the evacuation of the animals from it. And it's horrible because some of the people that were evacuating animals, a son was killed uh, with the father right there, and it's just horrific. But you're seeing all this in the video. But anyway, so this is when I got to this place, and all of a sudden this dog jumped out at me, which was a total surprise. It's sort of anxiety provoking enough just to be walking through there, but all of a sudden, this animal comes out. Um, but anyway, so Jay, can you run the video? I want to show what I what I was doing that I went out with
No
cat
problem.
rescuers as well. Uh, So Jay's going to cue it up. So can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Good. Okay, good. So what this video is, if we can play it, if for some reason it doesn't play, I can play it without sound.
It's playing.
That's playing fine.
You guys can see it?
Yes.
Yeah, and
Oh,
hear
See
it.
it and hear
interesting.
it.
Let me know when it's done. I guess I could talk over it, so I can't hear it or see it, but you guys can, right?
Yeah, we have the little cats underneath the little canopy there.
And you can hear the sound, so you can hear the
Yes.
explosions. That's artillery coming in. This is Vovchansk, and Vovchansk at the time in December 2022 was under Ukrainian control. Now it's back. The Russians have it, and so I just went in with these people that are risking their lives to save cats. Actually, we met with a couple of locals. Who knows what happened to them? But all this is going on, and so this is really more my interest. People daily lives, just trying to survive, um, and people just getting caught up like every conflict.
Now you have to share your screen again, Mark.
Okay, so now I'm back in.
Yep.
Okay, so let's see if I can um, share. Here we go.
And Mark, did you when you spoke to those folks, taking care of the animals, what was their motivation? Other, the obvious humanitarian piece of it, but what got them involved in that?
Well, I think simple as that. I mean, the people
Yeah.
that love animals. I mean, just like with me. I mean, I love animals, and so it's horrible. People get caught up, and lots of volunteers helping them, and for a later trip, and that's what I'm going to get to. Um, but I just wanted to show also. So these are some of the orangutans that were evacuated from.
Wow.
Oh, I'm sorry, left as orangutan, right as a chimpanzee. But people are not the only ones with PTSD.
Mm.
These animals, especially the chimps, were very shaken up by it. But these very brave people went in and evacuated these animals. And so I photographed them in the Kharkiv Zoo. And then the gorilla on the left is from the Kharkiv Zoo, which I picked up pieces of shrapnel right there, And so Putin always tries to say, "Oh, we're just aiming at, military targets or whatever." But this gorilla and this other animal on the right are not military targets.
And
And
is the documentary Checkpoint Zoo?
that's
Is that?
exactly right. I
Thank you.
would
Jason put that in there. Thanks, Jason.
thank you. Yeah, I would 100% recommend watching that. It's a fantastic documentary. Um, So I just wanted to give an overall map because some of the photos I'm showing are outside of Ukraine, but just to show you where I think things can move next. And so the first trip I did, I came in, I was doing a story on Odessa, which you can see. So obviously the green is Ukraine, but I flew into Moldova and I had heard about Transnistria. And I don't know how many people know about that. It's recognized as a country only by very few people, or a few countries rather. But other people say, oh, it's still part of Moldova. But there was a civil war around 1991. Uh, Russian troops are there. If uh, Russia is able to continue to expand at all, they would love to then connect to Transnistria, which would completely cut off the Black Sea or any water, body of water for the Ukrainians. So it really plays into this whole issue. And also, Moldova is not part of NATO, and so technically, if Moldova gets attacked, nobody has to come to their rescue. And there actually has been talk in Moldova of joining up with Romania, becoming part of Romania, in order to be part of NATO. So there's a lot of geopolitical issues going on. I won't do a big history lesson, but my master's is in history, and so always my interest. But if you look at
That's
this
good.
map, Yeah, if you look at this map, you can see the area in red to the right is areas that the Russians have moved in and taken over. Obviously, as Manu was talking about Crimea at the very bottom part, that sort of Isthmus Islandish thing, is there. But if they move up, there's not that much more. You can see where Odessa is, and so there's not that much more of Ukraine that can't be blocked off. And so I think that is the goal of Putin. I don't think he's in any rush to end it. So this is Odessa early on. Odessa was not a big target until the last couple of months. We've seen a big shift, but this is what it was like there. They still were sandbagging things. Left is I think a very interesting icon. On the right is Transnistria. So I actually was able to get in there, and it was very strange to walking, during the Ukraine war to be walking amongst Russian troops in this Transnistria, but also then, seeing what daily life is in Moldova, which I do think, if things go badly for Ukraine, Moldova will be next up. I would think that the Baltic states, that would be a very big move for the Russians, and they've had a hard enough time with Ukraine because an attack on the Baltic states is an attack on NATO.
Yeah.
But Moldova still is a gray area, and so that's the danger. So this is once again, this is daily life in Transnistria.
Mm.
And but you see, look, I've seen this countless times. The right side is at Odessa, where people are, rallying. They're not getting paid. They're volunteers for the most part. But this is back in Transnistria. You wouldn't know which is which
All right.
side. But then you get back to, Kiev and this wall, or a memory wall, there's different names for it, keeps expanding. And I know Manu, and who was there, I think might have referred to it. It started with a few images of fallen soldiers on the Ukraine side, continues to expand around the corner. And there's no reason to believe it's not going to continue even further. And here's a day where it's continuing further, where relatives are holding pictures of lost loved ones that they hand to somebody on a ladder, and then they hammer them, onto this wall.
Mm.
And just like what Manu, showed earlier, in fact, he and I were in the same place, obviously at different times, but on the left side. I mean, what's worse than parents, which you can see on the far side of the coffin, burying a son, especially under these conditions? And people said, thank you for coming here. Where other times, you might feel intrusive. I mean, I did when I first walked in, but they said, to get the word out. Oh, and I should go back. So the woman on the right lost her son and made an effigy of
Mm.
her son, who that she's holding. And then this is, carrying the guy out. And so this is just repeated countless times. And so this is what you see when you're there in Kiev or whatever region you're in. I just did screenshots on my phone where there's and what a way to live. And now, next month in
Yeah,
February.
explain this to us, Mark.
Yeah, so remember the war sort of had two stages. 2014 is when Crimea was annexed by Russia, and then 2022 February, uh, during the Paralympics, I was in Beijing, and it almost seemed like it was timed to happen during that time. Um, the full-scale invasion happened, and so things were developed, including warnings on your iPhone. So it's an app you download, and then you pick the region you're in, because obviously something's happening all the time in Ukraine. So you pick the specific region you're in, and then you'll get alerts about, if there's something incoming. And then people choose to either go down to a cellar, if they're in a hotel. All hotels have basements that have cots, or you stay up, or whatever you do. And so you could see, but people get burnt out from
Yeah.
constant warnings. In fact, I was doing an interview with a famous photographer, which I'll show you guys in a minute. Um, and completely oblivious, did not hear it. So I just continued on with the interview. I mean, if they're not going to move, I'm not going to move. But this is where some people ended up, especially earlier on. Later on, I think people are really, in Kiev at least, starting to just ignore it. But this is in a subway, which is relatively safe. But then once again, here's daily life, and this is what I'm particularly interested in. So in that same um, St. Michael's Golden Dome Cathedral or monastery, you have a baptism going on the left, and then at the Japan Foundation, because those who know my work or whatever know I have a special interest in Japan, they actually have a functioning Japan Society and Japan Foundation where they were putting on a concert and then it was fully
Really?
attended. So this is the amazing thing, and I'll show you a few photos that are even more amazing that you just don't see because we're focused so much, on the war. But this is a month ago, this or less than a month ago. This is a department store uh, that is fully functional, stocked, completely stocked with goods, and everybody's out Christmas shopping.
Yeah,
And then later that night, the air raid sirens go off, and
yeah. So Mark, I mean
yeah.
that's got to be an interesting thing, the game to play with your head, the human condition in these situations, and searching it and then finding these incredible events in their simplicity.
Oh, 100%. I mean, Manu showed, the ballet going on.
Yeah.
There's the human condition, unless you're starving, if you can go out and socialize, right? Because obviously, number one, you got to eat. But if you get past that, then there, people want to interact and do things, and especially, going on and so I mean, look at the window displays of this. I mean, you just wouldn't fathom that this is in wartime Ukraine, right? And I saw this in Kharkiv and I went later. But here, once again, I actually really wanted when I was putting my photos out for Zuma Press, I wanted to show this aspect about daily life. I mean, kids getting cotton candy, this little train going around, and nobody's oblivious to what's going on. They're completely aware of what's going on, but they're trying to have normality. And then going to a hospital. This is a care unit for kids with heart issues. But the problem's exacerbated there, and so these are volunteers that go around. We're bringing Christmas presents
Hmm.
for the kids, and some of them terminal, but really trying to make life a little bit better for these guys. But of course, Putin's hitting the power grids and all, and so so in other words, this is daily life. I mean, in daily life, there's serious medical issues, right? And so
Mhm.
it's not just people that are injured in the war. You're still going to have all the other medical issues. And so this is, documenting, the kids who then, of course, if you start to have less medicine, if all of a sudden you have power outages, then everybody gets affected. But these amazing people are out there doing that. And so, here's one of the patients right there. But yeah, people are always trying to live a normal life. And so this might seem so bizarre, but this is New Year's Eve 2025. And so this is an influencer who's actually a great artist. And I wish I could remember her name, but she was at the Intercontinental with her sister. She had lost her husband, and I didn't ask why, but he was a pretty famous musician. I don't think it was to the war. But here she is all dressed up, and it looks like a fashion shoot, right?
Mhm.
And then a few minutes later, just before midnight, uh, Zelensky is speaking uh, on TV about what he thought might be a move toward peace and having to give up some land. And the whole staff, as you can see, the three people on the right, just stopped and were just listening to every word. And I asked one of them, so do you think now peace is really close? Because Zelensky said we're 90% there. And they didn't feel so great about those odds still. because remember, especially if you're younger, what a big percentage of your life this has been,
That's
and of
been.
course, and then COVID 2 years before that. So, um, and then I went out to Dnipro, which is just a few miles from the front. It's the largest city, and this is in December. This is last month as well. So this is sort of you can see that Christmas, the nativity scene. Um,
And Mark, I mean, you recognize, and I'm hoping that your editors recognize, and other people who sees this work, how inspiring all this is to see it, to get this information out.
I think, well, actually, Scott over at Zoom actually said, try to get some daily life, which I always try to do anyway. And so that was a big focus. Nipro was for a foundation. And so Nipro was a different focus.
Right.
That was on refugees and the places that are working with refugees. And so the nonprofits. And so that was a different focus here. But the guy who was taking me around, as you said, the fixer is a vital thing to have in places like this. Or you could wander off really into the wrong places or and not get to where you need to go. But Dnipro was a very important city in the Soviet days for making rockets, and so they still have on display, their historic past. And one of the places that Manu showed, I think, was the same place that I photographed later, which was a destroyed munitions factory and possibly missiles underneath. And so this is sort of like, as we would say, an establishing shot if I were telling
Yeah.
the story in a photo essay. And then you go into parks and it's daily life there. But then, of course, you see this display, which I thought was pretty magnificent.
Yeah.
Um, but once again, Putin says, "Oh, we're just hitting the power grids, or we're going after soldiers." But this was a bazaar, nothing to do with any war going on, and they just obliterated the place. Um, and so I like to show symbolic stuff rather than bodies and things. But then going out, I went to one of the refugee homes. There's a whole union of homes where refugees are brought when they're brought out of from further east. Dnipro, if you can find it on a map, which I showed you guys earlier, but I should have pointed out Dnipro, which looks like Dnipro but pronounced Dnipro, is is very east, and so their power grids are constantly being hit, and so you see, and in Kiev you see this as well. You see generators everywhere. Now I don't know if that mattress was put on top of the generator to hide it from drones
Mm.
or to keep it warm, or maybe it's both. But then I really got in and met, the people and heard their stories about where they were coming from and how they got out. The person on the right is cooking. I mean, they sort of had to step back in time because they lose power so much, and they're working off the generator that anything they can do without that, such as cooking meals for everybody, they're doing just like the old days. I mean, people are very adaptable. But whole families, are squeezed into one room, but they're in relative safely. I mean, Dnipro is not super far away from the front, but it's far enough away that, especially coming from where they're coming from, and a lot of them were rescued by what are called white angels, which are Donetsk uh, police that have had to leave that area, and they're getting civilians out, and then they're getting picked up by other groups. And so here's another family right there.
So, Mark, seeing these young men in these images,
Yeah.
are they afraid that they can get picked up to be forced to join the army? I mean, is that something?
Well, here's the interesting thing is you're not required to go into the army till 25, which is interesting. That's the age. It's here, what it was 18 draft, I think,
Right.
but there's 25. You can volunteer much earlier, but and there's actually talk now about lowering that age
Right.
to at least 21 just to get more people because now that the war's almost going on, 4 years. But there are actually groups of people that are out on the streets forcibly, like, checking people's papers and can grab them and force them into the military. So that is if they're supposed to be, but they're avoiding it, in other
Right.
words. But here's a little kid on the left. This is in a town when we went. I mean, this is artillery could come in any time. But that kid on the left is with his sister and his parents who refused to leave this town that's right within military, right with and actually the week before a rocket had come in and killed a kid a few houses away, but he's right there. The girl on the right, I did in Kiev, but I like the shots. So I just sort of put them together. But when you go in, when I was in Vovchansk, which is on the left side, it's a smart idea to wear some sort of armor. On the right side is one of those white angels who was evacuating this woman and her cat. They always bring animals out with them, which is great. And I think the U.S. learned a lesson after evacuating people uh, after New Orleans, where they would not take the animals out with them, and that was a huge mistake because then you're leading to all sorts of other issues with the people, and it's just the right thing to do anyway. But I mean, she has her belongings in a garbage bag, right? And then there were a few other items in a truck, and we were transferring from the White Angels to the group I was with, and these are the guys that I was with. Tough guys. I mean, they're going out every day into the line of fire. And this guy on the left was a volunteer from the U.S. And then the day I left, a guy from another country had come in. There's really just amazing people trying to rise to the occasion.
Mm.
This town is so close to the front line and just it's almost completely evacuated. And then all of a sudden we come across these three kids on the street. It was just unbelievable. And so I said, well, what are they here? And so you see those little Christmas. What happens is the group I was with would drop off pamphlets with the parents saying, you can leave. This is what you're going to get if you come with us, and at least food for thought, even if they wouldn't leave. But then they would leave the kids with little Christmas gifts. But this just looks like a normal scene anywhere.
Yeah.
But you notice there's no cars, there's nothing because it's an evacuated town. And they said there's two reasons why this might be. One is that the parents might be pro-Russian and want to stay for the Russians to come in. It's not a given in this part of Ukraine that they're all pro-Ukrainian. Um,
Okay.
And once again, there's a woman on the left, and then on the right is exactly what Manu said toward the end. It is because I wondered at the time, why is he carrying a shotgun? That seems like a very strange thing. But that's for drones. This is what they've found to be the best protection. But you got to wait till they're pretty close, and you got one shot. But this is, and they shoot high low, with the spread of the pellets to hopefully get the. And so he's a white angel as well. Now, this photographer is probably, in fact, I don't know if any of you guys get copies of Black and White magazine. If you do, this is a guy that I interviewed who's going to be in the next issue. But just to give you a little preview, he's probably the most famous. He just had a unbelievable exhibition that I saw in Kiev, multi-floor exhibition that really traces the history of modern Ukraine and the revolutions they've had, the infighting, and so Alexander Gladilov, and so he was a gentleman I was interviewing when the air raid sirens went off, and just absolutely didn't hear them at all. And so here's a couple of his photos from that time. But if you guys do get Black and White magazine, you should have your issue within 2 weeks. But look at the picture on the right. I mean,
Mm.
that really shows. I mean, people tend to think of, wars are just in third worlds, places. It's just not the reality. I mean, Kiev, first of all, is a magnificent, beautiful city with lots of historic architecture, but then also, very modern areas. And look at this destruction here. And I think this is very interesting juxtaposition of, you know, there's beach life, right? But that was back in '98. But juxtaposed, but you still to this day, there's areas where you still can go to a beach or a pool. But then this photo on the bottom right, which is actually taken by, um, I call him Sasha, after he was wounded, and he was of another wounded person. But anyway, you guys should follow him or check out his work if you have a chance. And I wanted to end with this shot just because I think it ties in to because this is the reality. When the world gets deflected, or NATO gets uh, emasculated, the Ukrainians suffer. And so when I was in Greenland in 2017, I happened to do this shot. I saw this graffiti, and it's just so appropriate now. So it shows it's good never to delete
Oh wow.
too much stuff. So it's surprising. And then on the right side, I just simply put that just to, put the two together. But I really do think we need to pay a lot of attention and make our voices heard about this situation, this deflection. I do think that the goal of this administration is to get out of NATO. And if you get out of NATO, then you could say, yeah, well, you do need Greenland because that would be the first line of defense against Europe as well. But that's pretty horrific, and so um, I think that's the reality. So I just wanted to show that. Here's for some of you guys who know my work or don't know my work. The bottom left is the latest edition of the Japanese Bath, which we talked about on the last episode. And I guess we could just open it up for questions if anybody has
Yeah,
any.
anyone has any questions, now's the time. It's um it's really interesting, Mark. The idea of just saying it out loud that we could be leaving NATO is just like how crazy is that? How
Well,
absolutely crazy is that? And
everything we thought was crazy at one time. I mean, Jay, we were talking about this right before we went on live. Everything we thought that was just crazy or impossible, we're seeing can happen. And it, it's unfathomable. I mean, there was that movie, right, with John Candy or something where we went to war with Canada or something. Uh,
yeah.
right. And it's like, it was made a comedy because it was so ridiculous, right? But
Mm.
uh, things that we just wouldn't think are possible.
Have
Uh,
become a reality. Yeah. Could
you,
could become a reality.
could
Some
be.
of those things are. Yes, you're right. You're absolutely right.
And so, I've always been a positive person looking at uh, the cup more half full. But as Mary Ellen Mark said to me when I said, I hope this or that, she says, hope has nothing to do with it.
Uh,
So I'm like, wow,
that's
okay.
true. That's
Geez.
true. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
Diana has a question.
Mr.
sure.
Harris,
You call me Mark. Call me Mark.
Mark, I really
Yeah.
appreciate your work. You show really just the everyday and the humanistic view of people.
Yeah.
I was wondering, when you're out traveling, not in the United States, but when you're out traveling, do you have a favorite or a favorite place that you like to photograph or to view this side of life?
Well, Japan for sure. I mean, I love Japan, and so you can see, yeah, those two. Well, I have four editions altogether, the Japanese bath book, but I also, covered the tsunami in Japan. I covered the Olympics in Japan. Done a lot of different stories there. That is my favorite country to work. I just love the culture. I'm fast. I speak Japanese fairly well, depending on who you ask. If you ask my ex-wife, she will say, you know. Anyway, that's a different story. No, we're still super close. In fact, Robert met her.
Yeah,
Robert knows Mika.
yeah,
He did a
wonderful
key
lady.
ceremony with her.
Yeah, I saw her in Japan.
Yeah, which I appreciate you guys connecting. But
Oh, that was wonderful. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I love Japan. There's something just so great about um, Japan. But it's amazing how the world is because I mean, then if you look at you know Japan, and the rape of Nanjing and all that. I mean, things that we wouldn't think are possible can happen. And so I think when we really are students of history, you know, that favorite that saying, it can't happen here. But when we look at Greenland, we really have to stop. Just like, when you go to Japan and you meet all the amazing people, can never fathom that, the rape of Nanjing, happened by, the great grandparents of those people, or anywhere, or that we used napalm in Vietnam, and or Agent Orange. Um, Napalm actually started during the Korean War, but I mean, I mean, for DeSanto, they make a product like that. I mean, that's
Right.
just nuts.
And Mark, what do you think with all the places that you visited? Can you tell us what you think a common thread is of most of the people that you meet, for good or for bad? But like, what are the common threads that you find, like when you're on that plane coming home?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, and it's funny because I also did a book on Iran, two trips there. And Manu said it as well, really well. All people are basically the same. People just like, in 1930s Germany got into this frenzy and they followed this leader and it became this mega cult, and then the most horrific things were done. But really, most people, they're more interested in, having their kids have an education, having a good life. I mean, in North Korea, same thing. For my 10 trips there, and I've traveled, people say, oh, they just took you to what, places they wanted you
right,
to see. But, they did. I've been to 11 of the 13 provinces there. The whole country was not just
right.
redesigned for me, and so I saw daily life there, and it really is people just going about trying to live as best they can. So there's much more of a commonality than not. And I think if you see, since we're talking about Ukraine and all, people in Crimea, Ukraine. I mean, do they want this war? Do they want their kids to, supposedly over 1 million Russian soldiers and have been killed, all their parents. But you look at what's been thrust upon Ukrainians, um, and to live this way and to imagine growing up this way is just horrific, and with no real, it looked like things might be moving in a positive way, but Putin has lost the incentive. I mean, it's got to be an incredible amount of pressure on him. The only way to stop somebody like that is with an incredible amount of pressure, which obviously is not being put on by the one power that really can do it, is not putting enough on. And they can never win. I mean, Ukraine can never, if you go into a realpolitik situation, uh, Putin can always resort to tactical nuclear weapons. They can do, and I mean, in other words, something has to. He, Ukraine has to have the firm backing of the West in order to get a decent, livable, workable um, peace deal out of it. But Ukrainians will point out that there's been 22 conflicts, according to the people I talked with, between Russians over the many years, and Ukraine, and that this will just be a holding pattern. And the land that he wants in the east, and I was right there. He wants the higher ground, and so that he would have, just an easy shot at Dnipro, so he could build up his weaponry and his army, move them right into that position, and then start it up again in a couple of years. So, boy, I wish I could be more positive, but
No, I mean,
yeah,
power
yeah,
in the wrong hands, leads to war, right? I mean,
that's right.
that's really what it is. So, any plans to go back, Mark? I mean, in the near future?
But next up, but that's good to start on a positive thing. So next up is the way human conflict should be dealt with, which is at the Olympics in Italy.
Right.
And even the Greeks, when they would have the Olympics, in the original Olympics, they would stop fighting and give everybody free passage.
Right.
So we can do that, and so that's the next up. Yeah, I would go back under the right circumstances for sure
Yeah.
to continue on
And who are you shooting the Olympics for?
through Zuma Press.
Through Zoom. Okay.
I'll put it out and I'll get that stuff out, and it's also just great. There's a lot of non-linear payoffs for those of you guys, the fellow photographers. When you shoot, through an agency stock, you don't necessarily make that much. But last time when I covered the Olympics, I was asked by Nikon to come out and talk about the experience, and so that
That
easily
pays out.
paid for that. And so that's yeah, and also, other ways. I have an exhibition in Japan of my Olympic stuff coming up in April. I had an exhibition here, and so yeah, there's a lot of and also prints sold. So there's a not. I think for any of us who have survived this many years as freelance, who have found nonlinear ways
To
to
navigate.
to navigate.
Yeah. Well, if anyone has any other questions, um, now would be the time. But Mark, I thank you so much for doing this once again, and sharing things that we really need to see about what's going on there, because it helps us sort of have a somewhat of a bright spot for some of the places
Yeah.
in Ukraine, right?
Oh
And that's
yeah.
important.
I mean, even in Dnipro, I went out with my fixer there to like a great bar and restaurant. In other words, we don't see that side of things so much. But just like in North Korea, if anybody has seen my books in North Korea, show a lot of daily life, what people really are doing, because it's sort of sexier and gets more attention than the news, and it's more sellable.
Yeah, yeah.
The harder stuff, but it also is very important. You have to show the harder stuff. But I think daily life. One of my heroes, for sure was W. Gene Smith, and the way he could tell a story about daily life, whether it was Spanish Village um, or Minamata. Well, Minamata was daily life under very difficult situations. I mean, but Country Doctor maybe is a better example. It's about just people living their lives, and I definitely still come from that humanistic approach to photography.
Hmm. Well, great. I thank you once again, and just for everyone, tomorrow night we have two more presenters, Alina Movatova and Oleg Pestrakov, who both will be presenting from Ukraine. So we're excited about that, and I know Manu had to jump off, but Mark, thank you very, very much, and we'll see everybody tomorrow.